The writings of the Baha'i Faith describe religion as the mightiest instrument for uniting all humankind. So why are Baha'is being persecuted and imprisoned for their beliefs in the homeland of Baha'u'llah, the prophet of the Baha'i Faith? Persecution in the cradle of the faith, today on The Light of Unity. Welcome to The Light of Unity. I'm Anwandi Lawson. The Iranian government has clearly articulated a policy of extreme hostility towards its 300,000 strong Baha'i minority. Now, these are the words of the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Religious Freedom and Belief. We want to get the latest on what's going on for the Baha'is living in Iran today, and for that we're joined by Minu Vosega as well as Bill Allison, both here from the Metro Atlanta Baha'i community. We want to welcome both of you to the Light of Unity. And before we begin by getting into some of the current affairs of what's going on for Baha'is who are living in Iran, many of our viewers haven't been exposed to the Baha'i Faith, and I'm wondering, Bill, if you could start by just kind of explaining what some of the basic beliefs of Baha'is are.
Sure. Well, the Baha'i Faith is the youngest of the world religions, which include Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and so on. And it follows in a tradition that is true of all of these religions, which speak to a time after the appearance of the religion, when the religion would be renewed. So the Baha'i Faith, the Baha'is believe that we are the fulfillment of prophecies extending back to the Abrahamic, all through Judaism, Christianity, Islam, for a time of peace, and that the Baha'i Faith is the fulfillment of that promise, which we will hear very much as the Christmas season begins here in this country. And the Baha'i Faith started in the middle of the 19th century in Persia, a country which we now know as Iran. And it's distinguished by the fact that there are two prophets associated with the Baha'i Faith. The first, appearing in May of 1844, was a young man called the Bab, whose purpose essentially was to announce the coming of someone greater than himself. You might say the Bab, although John the Baptist did not see himself as a prophet, his role was essentially to announce the coming of Christ. And the role of the Bab was to announce the coming of someone, he says, greater than himself, who in fact did appear in 1863 in the person of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah. If you would translate that into English, it would be the glory of God. And Baha'u'llah is the prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith. And the Baha'i Faith, I say very quickly, believes in the fundamental unity of mankind, the fundamental unity of religion, and the oneness of God. Those are the essential verities of the faith. There are other principles that I could talk about.
So as the title of this program alludes to, unity being one of the central principles, and you mentioned the unity of God, the unity of mankind, the unity of religion. So Minu, with that in mind, can you give us a little insight into why there is opposition from the Iranian government to a religion that obviously recognizes Islam and Christianity and certainly all of the other world religions?
I believe that what is happening there is definitely the persecution of the newest religion, as Bill said, as something that the prophecy of Islam, some Muslims actually do believe that Muhammad was the last prophet to come. And so that is not in line with Baha'u'llah's coming. And so I believe that the clergy, the fundamental clergy in Iran, they don't like that. And they consider that something that they would like to be removed, if you will. And so that is the constant persecution is happening to the Baha'is of Iran in different forms, in different ways.
And this apparently is not something, although we've heard some recent news about this is not something that has just started in Iran.
No, it's interesting. From the very advent of the Baha'i faith in 1844, with the Bab making his announcement, the persecution began at that time. And in fact, the Bab and his followers were martyred in 1850. And then, of course, soon after that, when Baha'u'llah made his announcement, the persecution continued. And so it has been a history for the Baha'i community as a religious minority in Iran of being persecuted, of being forced out of work, not allowed to observe our religious holidays, etc. And in our country, in a land where we have so much freedom and liberty, it's very hard to believe and understand, but it's clearly one of the most sad experiences in the world today is to see religious persecution occurring in Iran.
And it's certainly gotten international attention. That the same report that I referenced earlier from the United Nations says that they really excommunicate, this is speaking about the government of Iran, that they really excommunicate systematically the Baha'is from the application of freedom of religion or belief by simply denying their faith to have the status of religion. And this is something that states cannot do. I understand that the Baha'is are being categorized as being a cult as opposed to a religion by the government of Iran. What are some of the ways that they're seeking to ensure that they can persecute and in many cases imprison people for practicing the faith?
It basically starts with pressure from different aspects of life. For example, jobs. Licensure, if you have your own business, your license is denied or removed. Going to school for children, basic leisure of life is taken away at the grassroots, and then really, truly. The highlight of it is that, that it started right after the revolution, is that the students could not attend the universities. Even Muslims that are friends to Baha'is are being under pressure to recant the relationship or fire the Baha'is who work for them, or not to shop at a specific store or from a specific person because that person is Baha'i. So really, truly, it's systematic in that sense.
So what you're saying is then that if you go to apply for school or for a business license, then you have to somehow identify yourself as a Baha'i? I mean, how do they know that these people are Baha'is?
Yes. Well, first of all, the Baha'i community was identified at the beginning of the revolution in 1979. And then secondly, all the things that you need to do in Iran requires, if it requires to fill out a form, an application or any sort, then there is the question of the belief is there. And of course, Baha'i faith is not one of the religions mentioned on the list. And so Baha'is, at some point there is either an other that they need to fill out, or they just need to leave it blank. And of course, the people who read the application, they know that this individual is indeed a Baha'i. That's why they don't, fill out the application saying they are either Muslim or Christian or Zoroastrian, which are the religions that they are in Iran right now. And that's how they find out. But the main thing is that it just doesn't stop from being under pressure from the economical way of life. It goes into every aspect of life. For example, Baha'i cemeteries are being defaced, demolished.
Now, is this something being done by individuals who don't like the Baha'is, or is this a government action?
Well, it can happen both ways. In some cases, you can't just by yourself bring big machinery and, remove the dirt and, pile up, do different kind of things. You have to have a support. In some cases, I heard that when a Baha'i house was put on fire, it was actual arson. When the residents of the house and the neighbors kept calling the fire department and so forth and so on, the line was busy for 20 minutes with no answer, and so they let the fire overtake the whole house. And so there are different things that are happening. As I said earlier, Muslim friends are being pressured to stop any relationship with their Baha'i friends, to fire the Baha'i workers at their factory or places. It just goes on and on and on, farmland being demolished, which is the livelihood of a small village, on the grounds that the owners of the farm who are farming, first and foremost, they're spies for Israel, and then that the food that they are making is not clean because they believe in a different religion. So human rights in all aspects of life is not perfectly given to the Baha'is, if you will. And so, you imagine you're a citizen of a country, you live there. And how is it that your belief reflects whether or not you could go to school, whether or not you could bury your loved one? Because, in some cases, they would not give a permission. You have to have a permit to bury someone. The permit is not given. It just goes on and on from different things, from here, there, and the other.
Now, Bill, you were mentioning earlier that this history of persecution has gone on since the 1840s.
Yes.
But more recently, there were members of the leadership in Iran, the Baha'i leaders, who were all imprisoned, I guess.
Exactly. Well, that's, as Manu says, in 1979 with the revolution and the fact that the political order in Iran changed dramatically under the leadership of Khomeini. And the Baha'is were identified specifically, and this series of persecutions began in 1979. And then the most recent time, that it's been ongoing, but the most recent time is that our leaders there were imprisoned and have been imprisoned now for going on 4 years. And it's really tragic, because if you look at these are mostly professional people, doctors, lawyers, what have you, and they've been separated from their families. They've been imprisoned. They have suffered this estrangement from their community, their homes, and nothing has been done to ameliorate their situation. I should point out that what has happened specifically to the Baha'is, and our topic is this persecution of religion, but there's been persecution of artists and intellectuals, etc., in a country where apparently there's very little freedom of dissent, of a difference of opinion. So I hasten to add that while we are being specifically targeted as a religion, there are others, because of as artists, writers, who are also similarly affected. And I'm not sure, Manu, if it's true of other religious minorities in Iran, but clearly the Baha'is. And it's, as you were talking, I just kept thinking, in the stories I've heard, when the authorities approach a Baha'i, if they will simply recant their faith and no longer say, I'm a Baha'i, they can go to school, they can have a job, they can enjoy the rights of everyone else. So it's a direct persecution, religious persecution that is being carried out. And to me, that's just doesn't seem to make sense at all.
Well, one of the claims that the Iranian government has previously made is that it does provide religious freedom to those who are not Muslim, including Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians. But recently, there has been the international outcry about the imprisonment of Pastor Yusuf Nadarkhani. Can you speak a little bit to that case, this Christian pastor?
This is a young Christian pastor and with a wife and two small children that he has. And apparently his crime is that his ancestors were Muslim and they converted to Christianity. And so he is told, of course, like many cases, like the Baha'i leaders or the leaders of the Baha'i Institute for Higher Education, when they had a court appearance, there hasn't been any written court decree to be given to them. And so he doesn't have one, but he is told that he is going to be put to death for that. And so it's not only Baha'is now, it's about other religions as well.
So the government says to him that unless he converts to Islam, then he's going to be killed.
Yes, the interesting point is that all the different things that we are told that we have been doing, Baha'is, including and not limited to being spies, just goes away as soon as you recant your faith in Baha'u'llah and become Muslim. And so that I have no answer for that.
It's fascinating.
You know,
wanted to add
another,
something.
just as she was speaking, another thing that's rather interesting, the Baha'is, which started in Iran and then moved from into now the world center of the Baha'i faith is in Israel. So as you know, with the very strong concern that Iran has about Israel, Baha'is are being accused of being spies, that there's some connection to our religion, the fact that we have a world center there, through no effort of our own. I mean, Baha'u'llah was actually banished from one exile to the prison city of Akka, and that's where our world center is. But because of that, it's used as a pretext to condemn Baha'is as spies for the Israeli government or something. And the charges are trumped up. The concerns have no basis in fact. These people who are in prison today, who've been in prison for all this period of time, simply because they belong to a particular religion. And of course, as Manu points out, it's interesting that Islam has this view that Muhammad was the seal of the prophets, which is actually an interpretation within the Quran. But it's also interesting because Islam recognizes Judaism and Christianity, Muhammad does, and so the concept of the oneness of religion from the beginning of Abraham through all of its evolution and the continuum. Baha'is don't believe this is the end. Right. That's going to continue. So it's rather strange that we're having this experience, but it's also interesting, and I hope I'm not talking too long.
No, please, go ahead.
The son of the founder of the Baha'i faith was a man called Abdu'l-Baha, that means a servant of God, a perfect exemplar. And he actually, he was released from prison in 1908, the Young Turk Revolution. And soon thereafter, he came to America, 1911, 1912. And so it's actually 100 years from the time that he came to this country, going to New York, Chicago, San Francisco. And it's interesting how he recognized the importance of this country and its democracy. Although we were struggling, as you must know, with our own problems, the fact of the matter, it is a democracy. And I just think it's very interesting. Here it is 100 years later, he came to America, and then think about the Arab Spring, the democracy breaking out in that area where we see the persecution in Iran. I just think all of this is very interesting. I'm probably mixing up the story, but
it is fascinating, fascinating. You know, Minu, you were speaking earlier to kind of how the trials were being held, and it seems a bit foreign considering what we know of American judicial system, to have something where nothing is written down and that the charges keep getting changed. But, you know, you, of course, grew up in Iran, and you had basically a run-in with the government yourself as a Baha'i.
I had a day in court too.
You had many, and
Yes.
understand some
Yes.
imprisonment that came along with it as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and help us to kind of understand how that system works in Iran?
Well, I was imprisoned for about 3.5 months in 1984. However, from what I'm reading on internet about the incidents on how and the authorities go to Baha'is' house and take away their books and computers and arrest them and so forth and so on, I see that nothing has changed. It's the same pattern. And I had 5 minutes court time. Had no attorney, no charges against me. And I was asked if I could bail a house so that I could be released. Of course, I didn't have one. And I explained that. But in any case, it seems to be the same situation with all the Baha'i arrests that's happening, is that, you know, in the best case scenarios are the ones that they are being asked to bring the title of their house.
So if you will give the court the title to your home, then you could be released?
Then you could be released temporarily, not forever. In the case of the Baha'i leaders, the 7 Yaran, they had, I believe, 3 different court appearances, but they didn't get but just a few minutes with their attorney, which was after all that international pressure was given to the country. They agreed, the government agreed for the Yaran to have an attorney. And their attorney, Shirin Ebadi, is the Nobel Peace Prize winner. It's the first Muslim woman who has been, won the Nobel Peace Prize. She was not able to meet up with her clients. And later on, her office, where her team was working, was closed up. When inquiry was happened, they were told that it's out of license and they need to go and apply for a license, which was, from what I heard, was not true. And so even in that case, when they had such a high
a high-profile case.
Profile attorney being their attorney, there has been no written court decree given to them. They were told that they will receive 20 years of prison, which is basically prison time for life for some of them. One of them, he was in his 70s, and so, you know, he doesn't expect to see the light of sun. And then later on, they said that there was an appeal. In appeal, it went back to 10 years. And then later on, verbally again, they were told that, no, it's the same 20 years. And it's the same case with the people who are involved in Baha'i Institute for Higher Education.
Yeah, explain that case now. That's more recent. That
Yes.
I guess the Baha'is were being denied access to education within the government system, but had established their own university.
Their own university. You see, right after the revolution in 1979, they had a cultural cleansing happened in Iran. They called it a cultural cleansing. That's what they called it. And so all the Baha'i students were expelled from universities, and at some points from high schools, middle or elementary schools for that matter. And so no Baha'i student could go to higher education. And also there were many Baha'i professors who were teaching at the universities. They lost their jobs right around the cultural cleansing time. And so what happened that these individuals came to think of, well, this is what we've been doing for our entire life, and maybe we could put together some classes for Baha'i students who cannot go to universities. And it started from having small classes at homes, with different individuals, and some Baha'i homes opened their door and said, okay, use my living room for the day. And so they used it for a day, and they went on and on to be receiving some literature and getting a little bit more organized in that matter. And they called themselves Baha'i Institute for Higher Education. That was the response to the human rights violation, that the children could not go to school, and the youth could not go to universities. And so they started having this university. Many years after that, there are many graduates of that university whose, after having taken tests and so forth and so on, they were able to get into graduate schools outside Iran. Internationally is acceptable, their degree. And so many years after that, a few months before, there was the same pattern of arrest happened to them, that late night, early morning, and their house was ransacked, and the books and computer and everything was taken. And so many people were taken to prison. 9 people specifically are still there. 7 of them, they have received they have had their court day, and they have received sentences of 4 or 5 years, and 2 others still waiting to hear their fate. And so this, in light of Baha'is are being told that they should serve their community, and they should be at service to their countrymen. In light of that, the children and the youth in Iran specifically are being prevented from attending higher education. And now when they start their own classes to keep themselves busy as a service to the community, those who are serving the community are being arrested. The same situation with a few youth a few years back who were serving at a very underprivileged community outside the city of Isfahan, serving the children, teaching them about clean water, cleanliness, taking the garbage away, just basic facts of life. But they were serving in that village. Those had 3-4 year sentences as well for serving their community.
So, Bill, as we look to this, what can the international community do to be of service to these folks if they feel that this is an injustice?
Well, one of the encouraging signs that we've just read about is a response on the part of intellectuals around the world, including here in our own country. I was interested that Dr. Cornel West at Princeton, who many of us know, was active in our own country in civil rights, but in China and all over the world, the intellectuals are very concerned about the limitations being placed on education in Iran and the Institute of Education.
Bill and Minu, I want to thank you both very much for apprising us of this situation and for letting viewers find out more about how they can become involved.
Thank you.
We want to let you know as well that if you'd like to learn more about this situation with the persecution of Baha'is and others in Iran, or anything about the Baha'i faith, please feel free to call 1-800-22-UNITE or go online to www.baha'i.us. I'm Wandi Lawson, leaving you with the words of Baha'u'llah. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth.